most popular divination tools used today, and there's something that I'm personally working on learning more about. My journey into runic divination began several years ago when my mom gifted me this set of runes and a book that she happened to have about runic divination. Though it's only fairly recently that I've started to dive deeper into the history of runes and how to use them in a magical context. So that's what we're going to be going over today. I'm going to be sharing with you the origins of the runes as a divination tool and the historical context behind their use. So let's jump right into it. As we know, runes are not just an alphabet. They are magical symbols, and there are many accounts in the sagas of them being used for their magical purposes. For example, there is a section of the Poetic Edda where a Valkyrie helps the hero achieve glory by teaching him several magical runes to be carved into swords before the battle begins. But nowhere in the sagas are runes mentioned being used in a divination context. Likewise, in archaeology, we don't really have any surviving artifacts that would indicate that runes were used specifically for divination. We do know from the sagas that the majority of divination was done by a seeress called a vova. The vova did divination by entering into a trance-like state. She had a specific wand she would use and would sit on a particular seat and then would sing certain songs in order to induce the trance. And while in this trance, she would predict the future for her community, though there's no indication that she would be using runes as part of her divination practice. So where did this idea come from? There's only one written source we have that mentions the runes being used for divination. That comes from the Roman Tacitus in the 1st century AD. In writing about the Germanic peoples, he described the following: "For divination and the casting of lots, they have the highest regard. Their procedure in casting lots is always the same. They cut off a branch of a nut-bearing tree and slice it into strips. These they mark with different signs and throw them completely at random onto a white cloth." So if we take Tacitus at his word, then it's likely some symbols were carved onto strips of wood, and then these were used for the purpose of divination. This begs the question, well, what symbols were carved onto the strips of wood, and could these have been runes? There is some issue here with the timing, as the Elder Futhark runes weren't really used until about 100 years after the time of Tacitus. Though that doesn't fully rule out the idea. It's possible that the symbols carved onto the wooden strips were proto-runes, or symbols that would eventually become the runes. Or maybe runes were used during the time of Tacitus, it's just archaeologists haven't yet found any examples. So where does this information leave us? Does the shaky historical evidence of runes being used for divination mean that we shouldn't use them for that purpose? We may never fully know if the runes were used by the Norse pagans for divination, but we do know that they were considered to be much more than just an alphabet. The runes are really powerful symbols that reveal important aspects of the Norse pagan worldview, and as such, they are great tools for anyone looking to connect with the Norse pagan gods. And in truth, all divination systems have changed and evolved over time. For example, tarot cards were developed in 1420 and began as a simple card game among nobles. It wasn't until 1770 that the cards started to be used for divination. And as someone who's worked with tarot for many years, I know that regardless of their original purpose, tarot cards are a highly effective tool for divination. Likewise, runes can also be an effective tool for divination, even if that wasn't their original purpose. Though, like tarot, runes are so much more than just a divination tool. In my view, runes can be used as a way to better understand the Norse pagan mindset and as a key to opening the doorway to a really ancient form of pagan magic. So I really hope you enjoyed this video today, and if you did, I would love if you would consider giving it a like. Next, I'd like to hear more about your own experiences with runes. Have you ever tried using runes for divination? And is there a particular rune that you feel personally connected with? So share all your thoughts down below in the comments. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.